welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into a serious topic, the discrimination faced by Black people in various countries around the world. From Asia to Europe to the Middle East, Black people face an uphill battle against prejudice and discrimination. So, over the next few minutes, we'll explore the reasons behind this discrimination and the specific challenges Black people encounter in these nations.
Our first stop takes us to China, the land of dragons, dim sum, and unfortunately a fair share of discrimination. Imagine this. You're a Black person trying to rent an apartment in China. You find a place you love, but then, bam, the landlord sees you and suddenly the apartment is no longer available. Black people in China often face negative stereotypes, being portrayed as lazy, dangerous, or even less intelligent. And let's not forget about the infamous blackface incidents on Chinese television. It's 2023, people. Haven't we moved past this yet? The reasons behind this discrimination are complex, rooted in cultural biases and a lack of interaction with Black people. There are many amazing, welcoming people in China who embrace diversity, but the reality is, anti-Blackness exists there, and it's a conversation that needs to be had. Hold on to your hats, folks, because our next stop takes us to Greece, the land of philosophers, mythology, and, you guessed it, a healthy dose of xenophobia and racism. Imagine you're a Black person walking down the street in Athens and suddenly you're met with stares, whispers, and even racial slurs. One of the root causes of this discrimination is the association of Blackness with illegal immigration. But let's be clear, this is not just about immigration. Greece, like many other European countries, has its own history of colonialism and racism. Despite the challenges, there are glimmers of hope. Anti-racism groups are working tirelessly to combat discrimination and promote equality. They're like modern-day philosophers, challenging the status quo and fighting for a more just and equitable society. Fasten your seatbelts because we're heading to Saudi Arabia, a land of vast deserts, immense wealth, and unfortunately, a system that often seems to discriminate against Black people. Imagine this. You're a Black migrant worker in Saudi Arabia, lured by the promise of a better life. You toil under the scorching sun, working long hours in grueling conditions, only to be met with discrimination, exploitation, and abuse. The kafala system, a sponsorship system that ties migrant workers to their employers, is often cited as a major contributor to this exploitation. Black people in Saudi Arabia often face discrimination in access to healthcare, education, and even basic services. The reasons behind this discrimination are complex, rooted in economic disparities and cultural biases. It's a recipe for disaster where the ingredients are exploitation, racism, and a lack of accountability. G'day, mates. We're heading down under to Australia, a land known for its laid-back attitude, stunning landscapes, and unfortunately, a history of racial discrimination that continues to this day. Imagine this. You're a Black person in Australia, trying to rent an apartment, get a job, or even just grab a coffee. Suddenly, you find yourself facing subtle and not so subtle forms of racism. From racial profiling by law enforcement to discrimination in housing and employment, Black people in Australia often face an uphill battle. The reasons behind this discrimination are complex, rooted in Australia's colonial past, its history of white supremacy, and a persistent culture of denial. But amidst the challenges, there's hope. Indigenous and Black activists are leading the charge for change, demanding justice, equality, and a future where racism is relegated to the history books. It's a conversation that needs to be had. Namaste, and welcome to India, a land of vibrant colors, rich culture, and unfortunately, a deeply ingrained system of colorism and caste that often disadvantages those with darker skin. Imagine this. You're a dark-skinned person in India, bombarded with advertisements for skin lightening creams, bombarded with messages that equate fairness with beauty and success. From matrimonial ads that specify fair-skinned bride wanted to discrimination in housing and employment, colorism is deeply entrenched in Indian society. And let's not forget about the caste system, an ancient social hierarchy that often intersects with colorism, further marginalizing those at the bottom. But amidst the challenges, there's a growing movement challenging colorism and caste discrimination. From activists to artists to everyday people, Indians are raising their voices, demanding a more just and equitable society. Ciao, Bella! We're jetting off to Italy, a country known for its art, fashion, food, and unfortunately, a growing undercurrent of racial prejudice. Imagine this. You're a black person in Italy trying to find an apartment, get a job, or even just enjoy a night out with friends. Suddenly you're met with suspicious looks, denied service, or even subjected to racial slurs. From discrimination in housing and employment to racial profiling by law enforcement and even incidents of violence, black people in Italy often face an uphill battle. One of the root causes of this prejudice is the association of blackness with immigration. But let's be clear, this is not just about immigration. Italy has its own history of colonialism and racism, which continues to cast a long shadow on its present. It's a conversation that needs to be had. Konnichiwa and welcome to Japan, the land of cherry blossoms, technological innovation, and, unfortunately, a culture of social conformity that often leaves little room for diversity, particularly when it comes to black people. Imagine this. You're a black person in Japan, trying to navigate a society where subtle and not so subtle forms of discrimination are often the norm. From being denied entry into clubs and bars to facing discrimination in housing and employment, the challenges can be disheartening. One of the most pervasive forms of discrimination is the concept of uchi and soto, which translates to inside and outside. There's also a sense of otherness associated with black people in Japan, a perception that they are somehow different, foreign, and not quite Japanese enough. It's a conversation that needs to be had. Welcome to Ukraine, a nation grappling with the devastating realities of war, displacement, and unfortunately, a deeply concerning undercurrent of racism and discrimination against black people.
Imagine this. You're a black person in Ukraine fleeing the horrors of war, only to be met with discrimination and prejudice at the very borders that are supposed to offer safety and refuge.
From reports of black people being denied entry into neighboring countries to being subjected to verbal and physical abuse, the stories are deeply disturbing.
The reasons behind this discrimination are complex, rooted in a mix of xenophobia, racism, and a history of prejudice that has long been ignored.
But amidst the darkness, there are glimmers of hope. Organizations and individuals are working tirelessly to provide aid and support to black people affected by the conflict. Privet from Russia, a land of vast landscapes, rich history, and, unfortunately, a deeply ingrained culture of xenophobia and racism that often targets black people.
Imagine this. You're a black person in Russia, facing suspicious looks, discriminatory treatment, and even outright hostility, simply because of the color of your skin.
From discrimination in housing and employment to racial profiling by law enforcement, and even incidents of racially motivated violence, black people in Russia often face an uphill battle.
The reasons behind this discrimination are complex, rooted in a mix of historical factors, cultural biases, and a lack of exposure to diversity.
But amidst the challenges, there are individuals and organizations working tirelessly to combat racism and promote tolerance.
They are like beacons of hope, shining a light on the darkness and paving the way for a more just and equitable future.
Thank you for watching. It's important to shed light on these issues to foster understanding and change.
We've traveled the globe from China to Russia, uncovering the often hidden realities of anti-blackness. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you or someone you know experienced discrimination in any of these countries? Let's keep the conversation going.